بعد الآخر، فما نراه اليوم خيالا يصبح غدا حقيقة. فقد أثبتت جائحة كورونا أن التطور التكنولوجي الذي كان يلام عليه سابقا بالتأثير سلبا على التواصل بين الناس وإعاقة حياتهم التقليدية باتت هي المنقذ الوحيد حين كان ملايين البشر حبيسة منازلهم. فقدمت التكنولوجيا حلولا عديدة للمساعدة في مواجهة جائحة كورونا عندما انتشر الوباء، وأيضا أثرت على الحد منه سياسيا واقتصاديا وتعليميا واجتماعيا أيضا. ولولا التكنولوجيا لما كان السلاح الأهم في مقاومة الفيروس الشرس وفهم طبيعته ومواجهته وإنتاج لقاحات فعالة في علاجه. ففي العقدين الآخرين قفزت التكنولوجيا قفزات متسارعة، ما أدى إلى ظهور فجوة رقمية وتقدمية ما بين الدول وبعضها البعض. نشاهد الآن فيلما تسجيليا عن التطور التكنولوجي وكيف سرعت وتيرة فيروس كورونا من وتيرته.
Fusion of advances in technology has been witnessed during the last decade. The accelerating emergence of new technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, the Internet of Things, big data, and the 5G network led to the looming question in all of our minds. Are we in the fourth industrial revolution? Seemingly, the ferocious coronavirus pandemic came with the final answer in hand. At the time the whole world was against the clock on controlling the situation, nothing has been more ready to respond than technology. Governments introduced stories of success by integrating digital technologies for pandemic planning, diagnosis, surveillance, testing, contact tracing, etc. From healthcare, education, government services, and beyond, coronavirus has pushed the adoption of digital platforms and services to the ultimate level to become indispensable for 4.9 billion users, an unprecedented digital acceleration that has totally changed the way we live, work, and relate to one another, and even the face of economy. Global governments today give more focus to their communication network infrastructures and put digital transformation at the core of their national and international priorities. And now, we are more likely to experience the metaverse and different applications of mixed reality. More likely to see technologies that offer enormous opportunities for monitoring climate change, closing gap in access to education and job training, driving social inclusion, and even helping us to forecast any future pandemic. But on the other hand, this paradigm shift has a dark side. The post-COVID digital acceleration has exacerbated the digital divide in vulnerable situations around the world, and also put the limelight back onto security issues. And these hard times became toppled by privacy wars, data balkanization, and challenges to secure data and ensure its integrity and continuity. After a couple of years into the coronavirus with no end in sight, the pandemic has been functioning as a catalyst for the implementation of the fourth industrial revolution in our world. But as we are preparing for the new normal of post-COVID, where data is the new oil and AI is the new electricity, can we take technology to the safer future?
هل نحن مستعدون للحقبة الرقمية القادمة؟
Are we ready to the new digital era? Can we take technology to a safer future at a time where the world try to overcome COVID-19? All this and more will be discussed today, believing from World Youth Forum in the role of technology informing future of the peoples. That's why we put this file on the table of discussion held under the title Future of Technology and Digital Transformation Post-Pandemic. Allow me to welcome Dr. Amr Talat, Minister of Communication. You have.
Also, we have Mr. Philip Wang, Deputy CEO of Huawei in North Africa and the Middle East. Also, virtually we have also Sarah Hopkins, Head of the Public Policy Department in Instagram in Africa and the Middle East. We have also in the room Mr. Mutazza Atallah, Professor of Advanced Materials Processing from the University of Birmingham. Also, through social media, we have Aisha Khana, CEO for ADO for Artificial Intelligence. Also, we have in the room Anahita Muqaddim, founder of Neural Being, writer and researcher. We have also Morjan Asghari. She's the founder at Thousand Eyes on Me and co-founder of Women in AI. We have also as well Dr. Dina Ayman. She is a technical program manager leading software engineering in programs at Microsoft. We have also Brian Buzayer. He is an African entrepreneur and he is the founder of Hydro IQ. In fact, the COVID-19 pandemic was like a strong driver to complete Revolution 4.0. My question to Dr. Amr Talat, will technology help us achieve sustainable development goals that the UN set? Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. I am very happy to be amongst this galaxy of experts on technology. We say often that the success of any project of information is linked to its reflections on technology and its ability to serve people and humanity in one way or another. And this shows us the importance of linking the digital revolution or renaissance and the sustainable development goals that the international community has been buzzing about. This linkage is a good standard to measure our ability to gauge the success of any digital advancement, especially in emerging states or ones that are facing challenges, because some of these countries do not have the luxury of technology, but they always wish to employ technology for development purposes, and this shows us the importance of using or to measure its ability to achieve the sustainable development goals. The general goal, in my humble estimation, is to uproot poverty or to eradicate poverty, which is a key endeavor if we want to tackle many issues facing humanity. If we look at the ability of communications and information technology in the current age and in the future, if we look at this, we notice that technology helps us limit our expenditure, to control our consumption, to also reduce waste, and also limit the diseases that sap the financial resources. All of these help us or are connected with poverty eradication. It also is connected to supply chains and filling the production gaps, all to reduce waste. This can only be done if we use ICT properly. If we also now go to, or I do not want to take a lot of time from my colleagues on the panel, if we are to talk about some of the goals or the standards or included in the SDGs, I always start with education, because it is my view that education is the key. Education is the key to renaissance and development. The pandemic, if the pandemic has any silver lining, it is that it accelerated what is called hybrid learning. The role of education needs to be understood in any state. So that it can advance. Maybe now we started with e-learning or distance learning, then we move to hybrid learning, so that we can make the best use of the limited resources that we have at our disposal. This started even before the pandemic, but the pandemic has undoubtedly accelerated our adoption of these new techniques, and it also allowed people to quickly embrace the idea of being educated through screens, and also it led to the rise of the term of platformification. In Egypt, we are interested into this trend, and we have a plan for a smart examination. We started the smart examinations in 27 universities, and we also connected thousands of schools with optic fibers, also for this purpose, in order to disseminate knowledge with the same resources that we have, and also to connect to as many people as possible. And it is also decent work is something that is closely connected to education, and it is also one of the sustainable development goals that affect man's prosperity and well-being, and his or her better living standards. And also it helps fill the professional gaps and qualify a larger number of its youth to compete actively in the labor market. There are statistics in this regard that range from 100 million to a billion, with a B, jobs that will be created until 2030. That these new jobs, you cannot compete for these jobs unless you have some level of mastery of ICT, regardless of that job, be it a physical trainer, a teacher, or any other profession. You cannot compete for the jobs of the future unless you master the skills of technology of today and tomorrow. And we have to direct and orient our academic curricula to impart more skills in this regard. In Egypt, we are really interested in human development and training. And just I would like to mention cursorily what we're trying to achieve in 3 years. We doubled the budget allocated for training and human development 22 times in the Ministry of ICT, from 52 million pounds in 2017-2018 to the double in this fiscal year. And this was added also to the hybrid education, which led to the rise in the number of trainers that we target from 4,000 to 200 thousand. This shows us the importance of technology, and it also shows us that through hybrid learning and educational programs that we can mainstream, like the Our Future is Digital initiative. We targeted 100,000 young people that we teach through hybrid learning and through platforms of e-learning, and also with some instructors or trainers that enable trainees to learn or to deal with any problems.
In a nutshell, the outcome is that this initiative cost us $13 million. The youth who were trained in this initiative and joined the labor market as independent freelancers, in 1 year, they exported 130 million export digital experts. I don't want to elaborate, but we cannot achieve healthcare without ICT. Even most of us attended in the morning a very valuable forum on climate change and emissions. We were speaking about life under the sea, or the wildlife, or the emissions. All this cannot be controlled unless we have IoT, AI. Yes, this, Dr. Amr, takes us to a very important thing that you mentioned. There are thousands of jobs that will be created due to technology. And here comes a very important to Dr. Dina Ayman. According to your academic and practical experience, how can we create a generation of youth who is prepared to keep pace with the digital transformation? First of all, I would like to thank His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi for this forum. Please, can you put the mic closer? Thank you, Excellency, Minister Amr Talat, and the attendees and the speakers, and those who can see us on the screens. For peace and blessings of Allah be upon all of you. We should raise a new generation that is ready for the technology. First of all, I will start. Researchers state that 53% of the leaders of business leaders see that students are not having sufficient training or education on technology in a younger age at school. And here comes the role of developing educational system and curriculums, and how also to train students and teachers to be prepared and ready, and to know what's in the industry, and to know how to use them, and to be flexible to develop them, as we have seen in COVID-19. We needed to change the way we were learning with. I want them to be flexible, to know how to evolve and develop our technology. But I don't want to create a consuming generation. The children, when they are young, they have tablets, iPhones, and they know how to use the technology, but they are not consuming. I want to create a creative, innovative generation, how to make a research on any information, how to search for it, how to use the technology to find solutions for international problems that will prepare him to financial technology, smart cities, solar power, clean energy, IoT. So I will teach them how to invest their intelligence, because one just small idea can change the world. This could be attained through having to study since a younger age, to study robotics, AI, coding, machine learning, things that would teach him what technology is. Also to have government programs like boot camps that would provide for anyone who need to learn technology and not capable to bear the cost and doesn't know where to go to be supported by the government. Also urging company to partner up with universities and governments to learn from youth experiences, teach them, and to have training in companies. Also showcase our technology in which fields. I have technology starting from mobiles to aircrafts, everything from medical equipment, technology is in banks. So I want to showcase this to the new generation from a younger age, how to use technology in a lot of fields that he could find his passion in, but maybe he hasn't heard about before. The last point, I want to create diverse and inclusive technology as much as possible, including all the people worldwide. It was since a younger age we were used that engineering is not for girls because the dad wants the boy to be like him, the mom wants the girl to be like her, and if a girl so now I have lots of work that was not present in the past. New jobs. I want to create this and raise their awareness that there are lots of fields that were not present before, like web in the past, web development. Yes, technology was a main reason of changing the mindset in all sectors. The idea of there are some jobs that are dominated by men only, and here comes the role of Boujan Asghari. How can we empower women in the field of AI for a safer future?
It's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me and giving me opportunity to share my experiences with you. So there's a question about, I believe, empowering women in the modern technologies, and especially AI. I would like to say that we don't need to empower women. We actually need to awaken humanity. And women account for 50% of the world's population. If you just think about that, it's amazing. It's a beautiful talent pool that we have, and we have not been able to exploit that enough today. And the previous speaker mentioned it very well, that we need to help women to have that mindset that they go for jobs such as engineering, such as robotics. So this is a world that I believe we all want it, because it is going to not only help women, not only help on the individual level, but also our economies as a whole. Women use as much as men all the products that are in the market. So it is obvious that they need to be part of it in building it in all levels, not only the end point of it. So today this is not happening, and the reason is the lack of awareness, and that causes serious issues. We see so many products coming in the market that they are biased. We have seen, for example, programs in recruitment that they are run on the historical data by AI algorithms that they are biased. We have cases of health issues that they have been working less, basically they were working not as good on women, and that they were used and worked on men, because you might be aware of that, but most of the world's data on health comes from the US military, which are mostly white men. So this lack of data and biased data is causing today a lot of issues, and biased products has a lot of damage on companies, on our economies, and on a human level. We are ignoring half of the population, and we are creating intelligent machines with our biases to them. So what is special about AI is it's not only taking our biases as it is actually augmenting our biases, and it can result in very serious issues. What happened during the pandemic and after showed us a very good lesson that previous speakers mentioned it. Women were the first, actually they got hit by loss of jobs. In some industries, they lost up to 60% of their jobs. And this is actually a reminder for us, again, that there should be something. Most of the lower level of the jobs and the workforce are based on service-based jobs, and most of them are occupied by women. And that is actually making women less relevant when crises such as COVID-19 happens. Talking about the AI and modern technologies, Specification of these technologies is that they have a shorter advancement and development cycle, and that means that we need to upgrade our skills faster in order to compete with the advancement of these technologies. And we don't have that, especially for women, and the education point is very, very important in that aspect. So the skill gap today is actually not getting smaller, but also expanding, and this is very much the problem of the world, not only, to a specific country. And talking again about empowering and linking it to the awareness that I mentioned, I believe it starts at the core of the society, which is the family, which are parents, fathers and mothers, and how we are growing them and putting their right purpose of life in their mind so they can go out and seize the opportunities. Then there are schools, governments. The governments can, and as it was mentioned, helping so much in investing in education and opening opportunities for younger generation, supporting women. With the policies, we can help actually guiding companies to follow them, such as, for example, we saw quotas in Europe that they can help a number of women being on the board. And just to finalize this, I don't want to take too much time off the other speakers. I believe in general there are much more benefits than only revenues if we can involve more women in the technologies such as AI, such as blockchain. There are studies that they show that companies having more women on their board, they have more creativity revenues. So it's not only financial, it's not only it's a good act, it's really actually working. It can result in better decision making and in general helping people to survive in crises such as COVID. And as a whole, it's better for the humanity.
Yes. يمكن واحنا بنتكلم يا مجان على فكرة
When we are speaking about empowerment of women in AI, and honestly, we cannot speak about empowerment without having infrastructure prepared in all continents. Let's go to social application. It's technological, so we need to use social application. We go to Mr. Philip Wang to know from him how can we take the advantage of Africa empowerment, like population and youth, to continue revival of digital transformation in Africa and G5.
Bonjour tout le monde, vous m'entendez bien? Can you hear me? Yes, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for the Mr. President. Thank you very much for dear Mr. Minister. I will explain my idea and experience in French. Okay. So, à l'occasion de l'Afrique Digital Economic Forum qui a eu lieu le 2 décembre 2021, un manifeste sur l'économie numérique a été publié à travers des thématiques telles que la stratégie digitale des États africains, le développement de l'infrastructure numérique en Afrique, l'innovation digitale ainsi que la formation des talents, afin de mettre l'économie numérique et la digitalisation au cœur des enjeux de rayonnement de l'Afrique. En effet, selon GSMA, il y a encore 28% de population africaine, juste 28% sont connectés et réseaux mobiles. Et il y a encore 19% ne sont pas couverts par quelconque type de réseau. Et il y a 53% de population vit dans des zones couvertes par des réseaux très haut débit, mobiles fixes confondus, mais sans utiliser le potentiel. Ces chiffres soulignent un potentiel important malgré les récentes avancées et mutations positives connaît l'Afrique pendant la pandémie. Le manque d'infrastructures, il reste criant. Mais aujourd'hui, on est très heureux de voir de nombre d'États africains. Le numérique représente une stratégie très importante dans l'ensemble de la stratégie de développement des États. Ainsi que, par exemple, l'Égypte a développé une stratégie très claire au niveau national, le Digital Egypt, et même au Sénégal, avec un Sénégal numérique 2025, celui-ci doit accélérer le développement du numérique sur le continent. Je souligne le point essentiel sur notre débat, c'est les réseaux de communication permettent aujourd'hui aux gens de se connecter. Dans cette nouvelle ère de numérique, nous allons encore plus loin. C'est le IoT et de la 5G permettront une connexion des personnes, mais surtout des objets, des informations, dans un point de vue personnel que commercial ou industriel. Ces technologies peuvent élargiront constamment les frontières des industries. Et voici quelques exemples. L'implémentation de la 5G et de l'Internet des objets au niveau industriel dans le secteur minière a permis de réduire le nombre des employés aux environnements à haut risque, tout en améliorant la qualité et l'efficacité des opérations. On a déjà quelques cas concrets en Afrique. Et aussi au niveau de la technologie mobile au débit, au réseau portuaire a permis de l'application du contrôle à distance des grunes dans les ports, améliorant l'efficacité et la sécurité opérationnelle. Et il y a certains cas très concrets, c'est en train de se passer en Afrique. Donc la maîtrise de la technologie, ça existe en Afrique déjà, dans différentes industries verticales. L'application de la technologie IoT s'est également rapidement intégrée dans le domaine de la consommation, de la production et des smart cities, avec la santé, le relevé de compte à distance, ou encore les lampadaires intelligents, etc. En Afrique, l'application de IoT et de la 5G reste encore en phase préliminaire. Mais déjà, il existe de très bons exemples d'utilisation de IoT en Égypte, par exemple, le projet à Port Saïd, où il est possible de communiquer en temps réel avec les hôpitaux pour prendre en charge les patients par les ambulances, disponibilité des lits des hôpitaux, l'état de patients pour qu'ils puissent préparer un meilleur traitement. Et ceci permet de raccourcir le temps de prise en charge des patients et de désengorger les urgences. Donc ça, donc tous ces cas-là, ça montre qu'en Afrique, déjà, on a une bonne maîtrise de la technologie réalisée dans différentes industries. Et en plus, avec le développement des réseaux numériques et des nouvelles technologies en Afrique, le continent devient plus attractif pour les entreprises techniques internationales comme le nôtre, et aussi pour les autres, et aussi les fonds des investissements qui participent du fait du développement d'une économie numérique en Afrique. Je note ainsi que les États africains accordent de plus en plus attention au rôle des technologies TIC dans le développement de leur économie. C'est pourquoi ils mettent en place des politiques dédiées pour soutenir le secteur. Je suis convaincu que l'écosystème numérique en Afrique va continuer à accélérer à travers un soutien toujours plus important avec notre engagement. Merci bien.
كل الأمثلة والتطبيقات اللي حضرتك ذكرتها دي بتؤكد إن في وجود بنى تحتية يعني مهيئة للتطور التكنولوجي الموجود، ويمكن معانا نموذج رائد من رواد أنا جواها أصلا.
Brian Bosser, who managed through his experience to benefit from Corona. Brian, can you tell us your experience, how you benefited from COVID, especially in Internet of Things?
The invitation for this forum, it's it's my pleasure to be here. And I really appreciate being part of this discussion. First, I'm going to give highlight of the work that I do. I founded 2 technology companies. One is called Ujuzi Kilimo, which is Swahili, that means smart farming. And the other is Hydro IQ in the water space. And our core technology that we leverage is Internet of Things and data analytics. So at Ujuzi Kilimo, we've built and patented soil quality monitoring sensors that are able to monitor the farm conditions, and in addition to that, we perform analytics based on the data that we collect to offer farmers decision-making support on the use of inputs and resources such as fertilizer and water. For Hydro IQ, we've been able to build the world's first virtual water network operator, which leverages on sensors to monitor the water infrastructure. And based on the data that we collect, we are able to advise utilities, water suppliers, and consumers on the best way to optimize resource use. For Ujuzi Kilimo, over the pandemic period, we've been able to work with more than 100,000 farmers across different countries in Africa, mainly 3 countries, that is in Kenya, in Nigeria, and South Africa. And for Hydro IQ, recently we are expanding into Central America, where we'll be collaborating with one of the biggest companies to develop a smart city. So throughout the pandemic period, we saw a huge demand for technologies, of which Internet of Things was really one of the key things, mainly driven by the fact that at that moment, most people were forced to work remotely and virtually. And one of the key things that Internet of Things then could enable organizations and businesses to do is to monitor their assets, monitor their resources, and most importantly, get the real-time data they need to power the decision-making that they had to do from their offices or from their homes. But we faced quite a number of challenges. And I'll take the opportunity to highlight 3 main challenges that we had to deal with over the pandemic.
برايم، عاوزين نعرف التحديات اللي قابلت.
We want to know that, Prime, we want to know the challenges that Africa's youth faced. You said that you dealt with 100,000 farmers. What are the challenges that youth face in Africa to create application, or even the companies who are dealing and using technologies based on Internet of Things?
Thank you so much for that question. So the very first challenge is around lack of adequate core infrastructure to support the Internet of Things technology. And by that I mean, for example, across the continent, we only have 22% of the continent covered with connectivity, internet connectivity, which means that most of the critical areas that require our technology, for example, lack access to internet and issues around power. So infrastructure is really one of the biggest challenges in scaling our solution and also launching or deploying our technologies in different regions. The second big challenge is really around lack of technological background for most of our potential customers or businesses, and also the consumers. So there has to be a lot of consumer training in order for them to start adopting these technologies. And in most cases during the pandemic, I'll say that most businesses were caught unawares because they did not have the internal capacity to manage IoT networks, for example, to deal with sensors for data collection. And because we're dealing with hardware and heavy equipment, for example, it means that it takes longer for most of these organizations, consumers, and businesses to adopt the IoT solutions that we offered. The third issue is really around the cost that has to be incurred in deployment, maintenance, and even operating the IoT solutions. So a good example probably will be on the sensors or the devices and equipment that have to be used to deploy IoT solutions. Most of these devices are really imported, so there's a very huge issue around the supply chain from manufacturers to get them to the, for example, in agriculture case, to the farms. The second issue on that is managing the IoT networks. So at the moment, we are talking about 5G networks, but lots of areas in Africa still do not even have 2G coverage. So it becomes really difficult to deploy 5G sensors in remote areas. And if you have to do that, you have to import the skill set, which also drives up the cost of deployment of these solutions in most of parts of Africa.
يعني مجموعة من التحديات اللي
A group of challenges found in Africa makes us go once more to Mr. Philippe Wang to know from him how can we benefit from the human resources found in Africa to finalize digital transformation. ما فيش ما فيش فرنساوي تاني ما هو الراجل فرنساوي يرجع يتكلم ما فيش ريلي فرنساوي انتوا ما حلتوش
pour développement du numérique sur le continent. La formation des jeunes talents sera la clé d'une croissance.
Qualifying the youth is the key to success. Now they should learn how to know all the skills that would be to be ready for digital transformation. So there are two things that we need to pay attention to: the digital infrastructure and training and qualification, especially in the economic and social aspects. In Africa, there are a lot of problems related to the coverage, the mobile coverage, 4G coverage. And this is actually, we can know from the experiences of the internet users. So we need to invest in the internet and in the speeding up the connectivity and communication. Excuse me, I got disconnected again. Sorry, الصوت اتقطع تاني.
La numérisation du secteur public comme du secteur privé en appliquant les nouvelles technologies éthiques telles que le cloud, intelligence artificielle, IoT, quand nous avons mentionné, et le paiement mobile par exemple. Et il faut mettre le numérique au service de l'industrialisation du continent. Comme ça, vous avez la base, vous avez l'environnement pour absorber les jeunes talents. Pour le troisième, on va bien former. Parce que, on a indiqué, dans notre continent, en Afrique, il est nécessaire de concentrer sur la politique de formation pour les jeunes, en donnant la priorité à l'enseignement des compétences liées aux nouvelles technologies. C'est capital. Celui-ci peuvent être initiés et financés par des secteurs privés engagés en Afrique. Par exemple, le groupe Huawei, on a investi plusieurs centaines de millions de dollars à travers le programme inédit comme Sys for the Future, ICT Academy bénéficie à plus de 1,5 million de personnes dans 150 pays, dont déjà dans notre région, l'Afrique du Nord, on a déjà bénéficié 41 millions de personnes. Rien que dans notre région. Toutes ces formations sont gratuites. En Égypte, nous proposons des formations professionnelles à nos clients et à partenaires depuis 2000, à former plus de 5000 ingénieurs en total dans le cadre initiative Young Empowerment prônée par le président Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Huawei a lancé en Égypte en 2019 le projet ITB. It means ICT Talent Bank. Jusqu'à présent, ce projet a mis en place 72 Huawei ICT Academy en Égypte. On signé les MOU avec les universités proposant des formations de technologies de pointe telles que l'intelligence artificielle, le big data, le cloud computing, les réseaux mobiles et les sécurités des réseaux. Il a formé plus de 15 000 jeunes étudiants universitaires en Égypte. Parmi eux, plus de 5 000 étudiants ont reçu une certification à l'issue de leur formation. Grâce à notre
سيد فيليب، يمكن البرامج الخاصة بالتدريبات المهنية اللي حضرتك ذكرتها
on continue de promouvoir l'emploi des jeunes. Voilà.
النقطة الخاصة ببرامج التدريب المهنية اللي حضرتك ذكرتها هي موجودة بالفعل، وتحدث عنها معالي الوزير عمرو طلعت وزير الاتصالات وتكنولوجيا المعلومات المصري، ولكن ممكن
Maybe I would seize the opportunity as representative of Huawei and having His Excellency the Minister to make a protocol of cooperation. To comment, Huawei, we made this program for 10,000 trainees in 1 year, but I'm saying this is one from more than 25 training initiative. As I said, we are targeting 200,000, 10,000 with Huawei. It has a great value, and we want to repeat it with Huawei. The training package and the portfolio of training programs is much bigger than that. Thank you very much. We will continue in social application, and we go with Aisha Khana. He is the founding for ADO for artificial intelligence, and we speak with her on the idea of the role of technology of the virtual reality in developing the work of startups and its implication on economic growth.
Thank you so much for having me here, Your Excellency. Wonderful to be in this forum. Virtual reality has really taken on a lot of importance in the last couple of months because Facebook has relaunched itself as Meta, Microsoft is investing money in it, Apple is investing money in it, and then of course the government of Shanghai has actually put it in part of its 5-year development plan. So how can virtual reality really help the economy? According to PwC, virtual reality and augmented reality have the potential to boost GDP globally by $1.5 trillion. Now, virtual reality can be used in 3 or 4 important ways by our youth globally. Number 1, for talent development and training, both in terms of accessibility but also better training. And I'm so glad to hear the emphasis of education throughout this panel. For example, if you take healthcare, many times a doctor is in a situation where he or she will encounter the patient in a situation that they are really, it's a crisis mode. One virtual reality training institute was able to put medical students through these unexpected crisis situations, and they realized that when they faced it later in real life, it made them far less stressed. Or even in healthcare, if you're sitting with a patient, and instead of the doctor being behind a computer, constantly looking at his or her notes, imagine that he is wearing augmented reality glasses and is able to see all the patient's bio in his glasses automatically while talking to the patient. So it not only helps in training, it makes our talent more empathetic, more customer-centric. Now, secondly, it helps in innovation. We know that product design which has a core competency of both software, hardware, but also problem solving. Takes a very long time to do. But with virtual reality, you can design something in the virtual reality world in silico and take your design process from weeks and months to days. This is in combination with a number of other technologies such as artificial intelligence as well. But it is unprecedented, the speed at which innovation is happening. It is really vital that our youth know product development much faster than they are doing now. And then, of course, you go to productivity. So I've talked about education, innovation or speed of innovation, and then there's productivity. Whether you are doing crisis management, preparation, or addressing a crisis, it could be fire hazard, it could be a security issue. You can have your law enforcement individuals wearing augmented reality and going and dealing with the situation in a way which is far more competent and fast than if they did not have the additional layer of information in front of their eyes. It's the same thing in warehouses where people are, or logistics, when people are working on transporting goods and supply chains, and its disruption during the pandemic has been such a wake-up call for everyone. And so what we see is a lot of smart cities are now investing in not only augmented reality, but then we move on to this idea of virtual universes. And that's when we come to the metaverse, where it's not only that people are using virtual reality for training or product design, but they're completely immersed in the metaverse. And in this, there is also a lot of opportunity for the youth. It's a new kind of digital economy. And we see it starting with fashion and retail and entertainment brands, where people are coming up and designing everything from artwork to fashion to whole new customer experiences, where very big brands are now setting up stores in the metaverse. That's another huge opportunity for an entrepreneurial young person. Now, these things are not possible without educating them from the start. And so I believe that the virtual reality really presents itself as an entirely new income stream for young people, but also a way to make them far more productive and innovative in the economy.
شكرا جزيلا للدعوة وشكرا.
Thank you for the invitation, and I'm happy to be with you in Sharm el-Sheikh. The 3D printing is a technology, a kind of technology. It's the part of Industry 4.0. Technology depends on producing parts from successive layers, starting from the computer file that describes the shape of a product in a 3D form, and currently we can produce shapes from plastic, from metal, and some medical parts using this technology. The technology expressed the design for manufacturability to the idea for design for functionality to improve the use of the product. The idea of having everything with successive layers instead of depending on equipment like the traditional way of manufacturing, this gives us opportunity to produce shapes to reduce the scrap. Also, it can improve the mechanical characteristics of the product. We can also let go of what we call the dyes and norms. That takes a lot of time in preparing those shapes. It has a lot of environmental benefit compared to traditional manufacturing process. Before Corona, engineering manufacturing relied on efficiency. I don't mind to manufacture a car in Egypt and the body of the car would be manufactured in car, the engine in Poland, and the electric parts in China. But with the what happened in the value chain during Corona, we care about resilience or agility of people are using this. The idea we cannot be on the value chain and to have an imbalance that stop productivity, and the factories would stop as it happened during Corona. We saw that the whole world faced a deficit in the medical parts, the masks, and a lack of ventilators. At the beginning of the device, this was the bottleneck. Will we have a ventilator if someone caught the COVID? That's why the countries, including UK, requested the automotive companies and home appliances to redevelop their productivity line to reproduce ventilators and medical equipment in short time, which we call adaptive or configurable manufacture. To be able to reform the production line to produce a different product in a short period. In addition to that, the 3D printing appeared with a lot of big number of volunteers who printed the face visor. Someone printed the masks. Some youth in Italy printed some connectors to serve 5 patients from the ventilator instead of serving one at a time, especially in the lack of medical supplies at that time. This was very useful. At the same time, the ventilators company had their own patents and put the engineering design with a digital form on the internet to give the opportunity for anyone who want to produce those devices in different countries of the world. And at this time comes the importance of the 3D printing, because it's a technology that allows us to use the digital data, the engineering design to print parts of the ventilators in no time. Normally, companies will produce 2,000, 3,000 ventilators a year, which is a figure that does not require to use this and norms, but to have mass production. That's why a technology like 3D printing to a great extent speeded up the production of such equipment, and at the same time they saved the world at a time that was extremely difficult. The lesson learned in general and the role of the 3D printing in the future is based on that we learned the resilience, the agility. We need to have the ability to redevelop our industry in short time to respond to the disasters and crises that could happen to humanity, or the challenges that we can face, including supply chain that could happen in no time, and we cannot reform the industry in the traditional manner to face it. That's why comes the importance of digitization. Due to having the productive files digitally on the internet, it allowed everybody to upload those files and reuse them once again. At the same time, the world should go in the direction of the ability of industry to develop. We cannot think that the same product will be produced for a longer time. On the contrary, we improve the products continuously. That's why it's important to develop our industry to be adaptive, self-configurable in the future. Thank you. Dr. Mu'taz, you spoke about the idea of the role of the 3D printing, industry speaking, and economically, specifically. Can we benefit from the 3D printing in the medical field, specifically in the medical devices? We go in the direction of patient-specific medicine. we cannot consider that antibiotic dose will be suitable for all the patients. On the contrary, every patient should need a dose that is suitable to his health and condition. That's why that's why 3D printing allowed us to have a personalized medical device that would help him to pursue his life. The prosthetics. If someone had an amputated arm or something, he can print a part mechanically, 3D mechanical printing, and some companies in Egypt printed parts that are capable to move using sensors connected to the muscles so that the joint or the prosthetic part would be able to do the normal part that the human would do, to carry a cup, to drink, to lift something. The other part in using the artificial joints, this is happening, and there is an expansion in Egypt and Africa. The other thing in the field of artificial joints, like the knee or the parts that are used to fix the bones, those parts, the surgeon uses parts found in the catalog according to the weight and the health and the age of the patient, but he cannot be adaptive to having tumors in part of the bones. He cannot be adaptive to a very complicated surgeries in accidents. That's why comes the importance of the 3D printing that takes a digital route, starting from the use of medical data, the MRI or CT scan, and transforming it to a 3D form to design an artificial joint made specifically for this patient to improve his life in the future. And this is one of the PhD thesis of one of the researchers. This question is, using a technology that is expensive as 3D printing is a good thing? Yes, if you ask me today about the difference between buying a joint manufactured traditionally or buying a joint done as a 3D printing, the 3D printing joint, the cost could be much higher than the artificial joint. But what happened in the UK is that using the printed joints was done by calculating life cycle cost. So I can give the patient 5 additional years from his life that he will be able to do his work in a healthy manner. So if we calculated the 5 years that he carry out his job in a healthy manner, we will see the impact on the economics. Maybe he could pay more dollars now, but in the future it will have a very positive implication on the economy. Thank you, Dr. Mu'taz. And we spoke about the role of technology on the reality and how it managed to develop a group of things. But as we said at the beginning, what we see from technological advancement started at a time as imagination, and this imagination changes to a reality that we live. And Aisha Khana spoke about the metaverse. I'll go back to Dr. Dina, and I will ask her, what are we expecting from metaverse in the fields like education and social and mathematical activities? Thank you, Ahmed. Let me define the metaverse and then tell you what is expected in the metaverse. Metaverse is integration between the reality to a virtual reality, using the augmented reality and the virtual reality. This is specifically after COVID-19. E-learning is the purpose of all government. Now with the metaverse, I can have a ranking universities. All the people worldwide could go to the universities while they are staying at home. So this will contribute to reduce the travel of students to far countries, and it will reduce all the expenses. And if we speak about expenses, it will reduce a lot of expenses. Even the building that to teach the students in, I will not need it, because they will be all learning at the metaverse from home. From the social activity, like in COVID now, we need to collect and connect the people worldwide. And exactly like what's happening now, with the speakers who are joining us from everywhere in the world. This will help me to carry out social activity, to gather people who are not present in the same place physically, to be sitting together and to feel that they are gathered and they can carry out activities together, to meet in a coffee shop, to go a movie theater together. And this will make them to carry a lot of activities while they are not present physically in the place. Sports. We have some apps that makes the people learn and play using virtual reality. It's already existing, but will expand. The most important that I can benefit from this by making a person who is disabled, who is not able to practice a specific sport, to be able with his disability to practice this sport in the virtual world. We want to welcome with the Minister of Youth and Sport from Bahrain, Mr. Ayman Tawfiq. Maybe one of the most important applications in technology, or the commonly used application now, is Instagram. We go to Tara Hopkin to know from her the experience of Instagram and what will Instagram offer in the metaverse specifically.
Sadly can't be there in person, but as your previous panelist has just said, it's amazing what we can do with reality and virtual reality. We'll see a lot of more of that into the future. In terms of the metaverse, it is something that I think we are extraordinarily excited by at Meta, and equally we have 1,000 questions. And I think everyone probably in this room, everyone who's thinking about the metaverse has the same 1,000 questions. And what will it mean for us, and what will it mean for Instagram? I think really importantly, it means that we need to create a virtual reality space where young people, particularly on the Instagram side, can feel safe and they can feel protected when they are in the metaverse and when they are experiencing the metaverse. It will be this incredibly immersive experience. We know it's beginning now, but it's quite a long way off. And one of the things that we're trying to bring to it is both the sense of excitement, but also the sense of how can we experience a safe and a space that is good for young people and is good for young people's well-being as well. So Instagram as a platform has been hugely embraced by young people, which we're very, very proud of. Teens are using Instagram to connect to their communities, to connect to a global community, to bring issues like sustainability and climate change into the forum and to use their voices to do that. And we want to continue to be able to do that through the metaverse. And I think Instagram has got a huge role to play in that. But I think importantly, what we think about now is how can you do that safely, and how can you do that when young people want to be protected? So I'll speak just for a few moments about how we think about youth safety and youth well-being on Instagram. As we know, Instagram is, and social media can be this extraordinary place, but it's also a place where we have to be very careful that young people feel safe, that they are protected from bullying, from harassment, from unwanted contact, that young people value their privacy hugely, and they want to control their experiences on social media. And they will continue to embrace it, and will continue to embrace the metaverse as long as they do feel safe and they do feel that their well-being is being protected in the metaverse. We know we have a huge responsibility in that space, and we work with young people. We have youth consultations. We're constantly speaking to young people and hearing from them of what their experiences have been. I think one of the things that we are really proud of is how we've built some of our products directly because of how young people have been using our platforms. An example of that is around an anti-bullying tool we have, which is called Restrict, which we did because we spoke to young people, and young people said to us, we don't necessarily want to be blocked, or we don't want to block a bully on Instagram. What we want to be able to do is restrict that bully, but keep some of that control for ourselves. And so we have created products directly because of what we've heard from young people. We also know that parents and caregivers are incredibly important. And some of the panelists before me have spoken about this. So teachers, parents, and caregivers have a huge role to play here, and we feel it's our responsibility to help parents and caregivers understand our platforms, understand Instagram, understand Meta, and help them start to understand the concepts of the metaverse. And so we've launched tools and features to better educate. We're about to launch a revised parents guide in Egypt and in the region in the next few weeks, which is really, really important. And we're also creating a parental supervision or parental controls function on Instagram to allow parents, caregivers and young people to sit down together and really think about the kind of experience that they want to have on social media, and to kind of create those rules, those guardrails together, so to protect their privacy, to keep them safe, but also to allow them to have this immersive, incredibly exciting experience on social media. So they're just some of the things that we're thinking about when we're looking into the metaverse.
شكرا تارا. بس بالتأكيد زي ما في إيجابيات يعني هيكون في
Thank you, Tara. Since there are positive things, I think there are negative things, and this makes us go to Anita Al-Muqaddam to know from her whether the use of metaverse will increase the social introversy or what?
Thank you for having me. I'm going to be perhaps less excited and positive, even though I do see tremendous value in the metaverse and in what you were talking about with 3D printing and so much in regards to AI. But I think ultimately it depends on how we use the metaverse, so the motivation of the user. And also the motivation of the creators of the metaverse. Is it going to be yet another space in which we escape into to seek more thrills, to pursue more pleasure, to dissociate from our bodies and from our realities? Or is it actually going to be what it is told us that it's going to be, which is a space in which we can gather, in which we can have deep, authentic connections that could truly transform us?
Can protect ourselves from the idea of being indulged more in the metaverse.
How can we prevent ourselves from being too immersed in the metaverse or overuse the metaverse?
Using the metaverse. Well, first of all, being aware of the dangers, right? So I love how everybody is so enthusiastic about it, and there's so many solutions that we can obtain, so many critical problems to humanity that we can solve. But first, to be really aware of the dangers of losing connection to ourselves. Again, unhappy people make bad decisions, right? So I think that, again, having curricula in schools in which children learn how to, first of all, not just dissociate from themselves, because it's evolutionarily we're wired to avoid pain, right? We're naturally seeking to move away from discomfort and pain. So having educational curricula where children learn to sit with their feelings, to not be ashamed of or not be afraid of their feelings, to be able to regulate their attention. And I'm going to get to the critical role of attention in my next part. So I would say that curriculums, and there is one actually that's already developed by Emory University together with the Dalai Lama actually. It's called Social, Emotional, and Ethical Learning. It's a free curricula available to countries, to educational systems to adopt. And you can perhaps be pioneering in the region by really stressing the importance and empowering young kids to really go through this training program so that they become the designers and the creators of technologies, but they're not disconnected from themselves and the immense resources that they have within them already.
شكرا. مجان أنيتا اتكلمت على فكرة إن
Anita spoke about the idea that the metaverse and the future is going to control things like happiness, satisfaction, and for that reason they will be inclined to spend more time on this new world, the metaverse. But we'd like to know from you, AI, is AI able to manipulate people's emotions and making them captives to the unreal world?
I think Anahita said exactly the essence and the core of the message I want to also share very beautifully, so thank you so much, Anahita. In the case of AI, I think it's exactly similar, the same thing. We have, for example, use cases of AI such as chatbots that they are used today, for example, for patients with psychological issues to help them to deal with their mental issues and really aid them in that sense. And then on the other side of it, there had been usages of chatbots which resulted in, for example, teenagers falling in love and going through emotional traumas and even suicidal behaviors. So this is also on this a little bit darker side of it, or like the effects of not really thinking how we're not asking the right question, why we have that and what is the purpose of the technologies. I'm going to give a couple of other examples too of AI. For example, in Japan, this very strong interest in companion robots and companion technology in general, but specifically robots, that there are increasing and expanding actually the inappropriate behavior that exists already in humans elsewhere, but replicating it and augmenting that too. Maybe very usual and daily applications of it is actually your phone's map application, that you want to go from point A to B, and then because you start trusting this application so much, which is based, for example, on some AI routing recommendation system, you stop trusting yourself. And in some cases, even though the application is taking you to the wrong road, you still go there because you start to give too much importance to the AI, to that application, without really connecting to yourself and your own knowledge. The example of social media actually is very interesting, because the essence of social media existence was actually to connect humans, connecting us and hacking the distance that is between us, which was a beautiful message, beautiful solution. But it started to slowly disconnect us. And by saying disconnection, I mean disconnecting from our essence of who we are as humans. And we have this body, and this body is made, with meat and with, all the biology that exists in us, and we need that human connection. That's our essence, that's the nature. So we have become the product ourselves, slowly over time, by using these technologies. And in a sense, we can say we have become slaves of our technologies, not because of bad intentions, because these applications and products, they were built with good intentions. And that's actually the trap which is so easy to fall into it, because it's a very interesting solution to a core problems that we had. The more humans look for meaning and purpose outside of themselves, the more they feel lonely, and the more they look for wrong solutions. And that's exactly what you said, Anahita. And the more we do that, we are actually, by doing that, trying to find solutions to our emotional and spiritual holes, to feel them. And this is the wrong, actually, way of looking at technologies to solve our problem. Technology is not to replace humans, but to augment us and make us better humans. So when we get disconnected, when we get ungrounded from our roots, we lose a life purpose, and we turn into actually tools ourselves. And we become slaves to our own inventions. So I'm just going to quickly talk maybe about a few things that it can happen. For example, we have speakers from Instagram. I believe actually one of the things that it can help us, for example, in social media, to be able to use them as very beneficial tools, is to have the control, to give back the control to the users, so they can choose when they want to unplug, what they want to see, and work a lot on those feedback loops that actually are, for example, built into the AI. Why am I seeing that content? How can I actually not see that content? And this is a very important question to have it. and then break those wrong feedback loops so we don't get stuck in the bubble, a virtual fake bubble, that we keep seeing the same thing without knowing anything else about the external world happening somewhere else. We need to also work on ethical frameworks, like global ethical frameworks, which is a very hard thing, and that's why we haven't managed to have that yet. But there are really good works happening with the European Commission. I know they have come up with the Trustworthy AI framework. We also have RCEP, which is actually working on frameworks for IoT, 5G, and they come up with a lot of regulations and recommendations how we can use these technologies. Companies, for example, I know Accenture is one of the pioneers of creating AI frameworks and principles to follow, AI ethical frameworks. And all of these are helping us to know how we can
يعني مرجان النقطة دي تحديدا.
This point in particular will actually take us to Aisha Khana to listen from her, because she's the founder and the CEO of ADO, because she can tell us about the legal framework and the ethical framework for the use of smart systems and AI systems that are responsible. So let's go to Aisha Khana.
This is a very important question, which is how do you design any technology, whether it's artificial intelligence or IoT or 3D printing or the metaverse, in a balanced manner. So you don't want to have an emotional reaction, you want to have a system of governance. And that's something that in Singapore, the government works very, systematically towards. Now, there are a couple of things to keep in mind. The first is that the artificial intelligence should be fair and not be biased. And there are many ways that it can be biased. One of the ways we saw in California was that the judge had an AI assistant that was recommending who could be given parole or not. And they discovered that the AI was consistently rejecting parole of African American men. And this is because of the history of injustice and history of bias that was already baked into the data that was feeding the algorithm. Now, this problem, there are real solutions to this. There are metrics, such as fairness metrics. My co-founder actually did his PhD in how to reduce bias in AI algorithms. And then there is also processes and data governance and monitoring and inspection analysis. So that's one thing that you have to keep in any ethical framework is bias. Another thing is, of course, safety. This is incredibly important when you come to anything that can seriously harm a human being. So if it's a self-driving car, for example, in Singapore especially, we keep trying to look and globally for protocols that have really tested these cars before the AI-driven cars are released into any environment where even a single person could be killed because the AI is still learning. So in that sense, you need a lot of simulated, unexpected, random scenarios that are faced, and these companies should face extreme scrutiny, like the European Commission says, because there is a risk to people's lives. Then there's another thing. Is it even possible, ethically, that as you take jobs away from people because of automation, and it does happen, as AI comes, people find that their jobs have been automated and they become disheartened. And that's where the government has to come in. And you make sure that the digital divide does not increase. And the government and the non-profit sector and even the companies where these are implemented have a whole pathway of upskilling people so that they feel included in this AI revolution. There's also the question of when automation is happening, especially if you have AI agents. And we just spoke about whether it is robots that have AI in the home or whether it is AI that is in the environment. The AI must reveal itself as an AI. So whether you are talking to an AI psychiatrist or an AI customer service agent, the AI must reveal itself so the human beings know that they are in fact talking to an artificial entity. Just in the news recently was that there is a very large real estate agency in China that gave an artificial intelligence agent Employee of the Year because its job was in the accounting department to try to get payments from people. And so it would send them emails and targeted phone calls, and it had an over 90% success rate. Now, we live in an environment, we are going to, whether we like it or not, we are going to live in an environment where AI is going to be our colleagues, they are going to be maybe our friends, they are going to be avatars in the metaverse, and we have to have a governance framework for this. Now, the last one that I want to talk about is digital justice. This is a new area, which is what happens when you are a victim by people in a digital environment, or you're a victim of an AI. You're a victim of a bot, you're a victim of, and you could be a victim in many ways. You could have been scammed, you could have been hurt. There has to be a recourse. The recourse is a pathway that the government sets up. When you have a complaint against a company that owns an AI and that has done you any harm, there should be public knowledge on where to go, who to call, and the judicial system must make it very clear what the repercussions are of this, and how can normal citizens like me, what am I supposed to do about that? So there's an education element, not only for our young lawyers who are studying, but also across the whole country and global environment. Now, the European Commission was mentioned. I'm a big fan of the European Commission, both in terms of the rules that they put in for data privacy, which have now been adopted everywhere from Asia to several states in the United States, to the fact that now they're looking at artificial intelligence as a risk-based system. So they're fundamentally recognizing that where there is a lot of good, there is also risk. And in this, they have a three-tier system of high risk, medium risk, and low risk. High risk is something that can really affect your well-being or is a danger to someone, such as facial recognition systems that are being used to stop you from entering your home or from entering a country, for example. Only governments should really be using these. And then there are others, such as if you should get a loan for your house or for your business, or even insurance for your elderly grandparents or your parents. If AI is making these decisions, first of all, this has to be governed, audited, or at least there should be a regulatory framework. And secondly, it should be more explainable, and companies should make an effort to explain how AI came up with this. And third, of course, you have low risk, such as if you are being recommended a book or a magazine. So these are less regulated. And I think what we'll see is that across the world, with thought leadership from countries such as Egypt and European countries and Singapore and South America, we will see an emergence of an ethical framework for AI that will bring out the best in these technologies. Because all the technologies we spoke of today have immense potential to do well, reduce poverty, eradicate disease, help us connect to each other. But when we have not an emotional reaction, but if we have a governance framework, then we are able to address and mitigate the risks in a very systematic manner.
شكرا عائشة. يمكن في
Thank you very much, Aisha. There are many questions that were posed on data protection and protection of privacy, and we will also talk about that with one of the biggest companies and we will talk to Tara Hopkins, the policy director in Instagram, and we would like to know from her the role of social media platforms and how they can protect young people on the internet.
So much richness in this conversation and so many questions, I have to say. Look, this is something that we think about day in, day out, is that balance between helping young people particularly, and that's what this forum is all about, helping young people to connect and make empowering and enriching their lives through social media, through Instagram and through Meta, with balancing their safety, balancing their well-being, and really importantly, balancing their privacy. I think these are the four things that we're constantly thinking about. It's how do you enrich and empower? How do you provide an equitable society where everyone is able to have the benefits of social media and the internet and in the future the metaverse, while making sure that we're protecting particularly younger or vulnerable users of these services and giving them privacy. So there's kind of three elements there. The way we think about it is through 5 ways. So we look at the policies that we have, and we have very, very detailed policies of what you can and cannot share, and what you can and cannot do on our services. And when people break these rules, they will have action taken against them, whether that is losing the account or giving people a second chance to change their behaviours. The second thing is about partnerships, and this is incredibly important. And these have to be global partnerships. You talked about the bias that you experienced, that you heard about in California. This is incredibly important. We have an equity team set up on Instagram in the last couple of years to look at exactly this, to look at the unconscious and the conscious biases that you might come across in AI, you might come across in algorithms, and to counter those. So there's a team that are directly looking at that, and it's an incredibly important piece of work, because it has to work for everyone, or else there'll be more inequality in the world, which none of us want to see. The other thing then is about the tools and the features that we're able to produce for people. And this is really important again, because people want more control over their experience, and young people particularly want more control over their experience. We know that as young people grow older, they want to be able to control how they show up offline and online, and so we're creating ways for them to be able to look after that kind of privacy. So the first thing I'd say is that on Instagram, in the last year or so, we have established that all young people coming to Instagram under the age of 16 have a private by default account on Instagram. And this is really important because, again, we spoke to young people, we asked them about it, and historically they would have had a public account, but our research showed that they appreciated this private experience so much that during the testing of a private versus a public account on Instagram, that 8 out of 10 young people accepted the privacy by default settings on sign-up. So I think that's important, that we're moving towards a world where young people want to be in this space. Yes, sorry.
Dr. Aisha spoke about misleading people or misinformation on social media. What methodology do you adopt to face fake news on Instagram?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. It's another incredibly important aspect of it. So we have a zero tolerance for any harmful content on our platforms, and we're investing really heavily in tackling whether that's hate speech or misinformation on Meta and on Instagram. I'll talk about this in the context of COVID and the pandemic, because I think that's what really, we really saw this and felt this, I think, over the last couple of years. So since the beginning of the pandemic, we have been able to remove 20 million instances of COVID-19 or vaccine misinformation from Meta globally. And we've been displaying warnings on more than 190 million pieces of COVID-19 related content that we have third-party fact checkers looking at and rating as either false or negative. Because I think one of the most important things is both finding and removing this kind of content. And this is back to AI, which is incredibly important in doing this at scale. There are hundreds of millions, if not billions, of people using social media. So training the artificial intelligence to find and remove this kind of content at scale and fast is incredibly important. And I think Meta has become world leading in doing this over the last couple of years. But the other thing that's incredibly important is how to counter rumors, and that the way you counter rumors around misinformation, whether that's COVID misinformation or any other misinformation, is by connecting our users, connecting people to credible sources. And that's what we've been doing over the last couple of years, and a lot of other social media platforms have been doing it as well. I think our statistic is over 2 billion people have viewed on Meta services authoritative information about COVID-19. And that it's connecting people, whether that's to their local health service, whether that's connecting people to the WHO or to UNICEF in some countries. It's making sure that people are able to find credible and authoritative and reliable information when they might be being bombarded with misinformation. So they're the two things we're doing, is finding and removing and building AI to do this at scale. While also using our platforms for good in terms of connecting people to that authoritative and reliable information. But look, it's an ongoing and sometimes a highly adversarial space, and then improving over time and evolving over time and understanding it is something that we're really focused on.
شكرا تارا هوبكنز، وبنرحب بدكتور كيفن فراي الرئيس التنفيذي لمبادرة الأمم المتحدة.
Dr. Kevin, at the beginning of the session, we were speaking about the use of technology during COVID-19 speeded up the use of technology and effected a change. We want to define digital poverty that appeared more during the COVID-19 in the post-pandemic world.
It's great to be here. I lead a global partnership. We just heard about partnerships called Generation Unlimited, which has a mission to reach 1.8 billion young people around the world and connect them with opportunities. Opportunities for employment, for entrepreneurship, for skilling and training. But what we know and what we learn and what sits at the base of everything we do is that to enable young people like that, they must be connected to the internet. So what is digital poverty? At its most kind of simple definition, it's access to the internet, but also having the skills then, once you have access, to be able to use it safely and effectively. I have a couple of statistics here that I think will make a very kind of paint a stark picture, but a realistic picture of what we're looking at globally when we talk about digital poverty. So 2.2 billion, and that's almost 2/3 of all children and young people under the age of 25. So 65% do not have internet access at home. And that's according to a report issued by UNICEF and the International Telecommunications Union just last year. And when we talk about those 2.2 billion people who are not connected, so who are they, where are they? I think the statistics get even worse. So what you'll find out is that in low-income countries, only 6% of children and youth have connection to the internet. And to just give a comparison, 87% of children and youth in high-income countries are connected to the internet. And I think, we had a natural experiment. It's not theoretical anymore when we say what happens when children are not connected to the internet. At the height of the pandemic, 1.6 billion young people were out of school, and many of them who are not connected to the internet were not learning. Some schools are just opening again. We heard just recently Uganda, one of the longest lockdowns globally, has just opened their schools. That's a country where very many people are not connected to the internet. So we have to address digital poverty. If we want to talk about empowering youth with skills and jobs of the future, they need to have access to the internet, because at the end of an internet connection is opportunity. Opportunity for world-class learning, opportunity for entrepreneurial ventures, opportunity to access job tech and get jobs. So fundamentally, if we want to address the bigger picture of what we're talking about at this forum, we have to put digital poverty at the center of that discussion.
شكرا دكتور.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Doctor. I would like to say in the last round, we will listen to Dr. Mu'taz Atallah and Mr. Philip Wang, and we will close with His Excellency Ambassador Amr Talat, Minister of Communication. I'll go quickly to Dr. Mu'taz Atallah, and from your experience, how I can settle the 3D printing in the developing countries. I'm going to start with what the minister mentioned, which is education. To offer any new technology, we must invest in education. And education is not just university education, but as well technical and vocational. And while I'm in UK, Egypt is witnessing huge leaps. Few years ago, we were listening about communication engineer, mechanical engineer, but in the last year, we started to hear about an engineer specialized in digital manufacturing engineer, or an engineer graduated with a degree in 4.2. Those are terms that we see. That's why we need to develop education so that it will be able to include such topics, so that you will have a degree in education and a 3D printing to have. We can see it in hospitals, in the dentist, at the dentist. The question is, will the 3D printing overcome the traditional manufacturing? Of course no. When you introduce the mechanical printing from Gothenburg, this is what eradicated it opened a new manufacturing, which is the modern printing. Another thing, in the developing country, they depend mostly on old equipment, and those equipment, we call it a legacy. The company that were producing it stopped to produce it. That's why there is a huge deficit in the spare parts. Let alone some parts might stop working, and some of them are medical equipment that its cost exceed tens of millions, or agricultural equipment, or spinning and weaving. When those equipment actually stop, they have huge impact on the economy. So one of the most important role in the 3D printing is the spare parts. And in that case, we can integrate 3D printing with reverse engineering. When there is a need to a broken part in a machine, a production line, it is remanufactured using the 3D scanning, the virtual reality with the 3D printing, to solve a problem that could have huge manufacturing problem. Developing world depends primarily on the dies and molds to support the plastic and plastic injection. That could be the biggest industry in Egypt that is totally, we rely on it from abroad. That's why this it should be settled using 3D printing, and we praise the Egyptian initiative with one of the German companies to establish a very big factory that produce digital equipment that help on producing spare parts in Egypt. The last thing is digitization of industry in general. As I said before about the idea of what happened during the COVID pandemic, and having the data and the ventilation digitally was present digitally, there is a need for all Egyptian products and developing countries to be digitalized and put digitally. It's normal that Egyptian citizen would use the refrigerator for 30 years. We call it's actually a lasting goods, but the European citizen might use his equipment for a lesser time. We cannot request producing companies to put spare parts and special parts for quite a long time, but maybe we can request them, and maybe we can put the production files of those devices on the internet, so that when the citizen needs a drawer, a broken part, to request it digitally from the internet, so we overcome our need for stocking and provide just-in-time production. We don't have a stock. We we get it just when we need it. All those things is very important for the settlement of the 3D printing in the developing countries. But we start with education. Ahmed, I would like to add something. When we speak about education, I would like that every country would have statistics with the numbers in work, to clarify the numbers that are present in all the sectors of the society, especially technology. It's the main factor based on any And if there is an imbalance, I can see it. And of course, there will be problem in the number of women. I would like to develop this in the education sectors. In order for this to happen, we need to have digitalization and digital transformation. And this will make me go to Philip Wang, Vice CEO for Huawei in Africa and the Middle East, to know from him how we can benefit from a huge company like Huawei to help Africa digitally.
This is the basis of technology in Huawei. What does Huawei do to support Africa and Egypt in this path? There are 4 points that I need to talk about. First, skills. At the international level, Huawei
we tried to make every house and every place in the world be connected to the internet and the AI. With the help of more than 100,000 researchers in Huawei, and with investments estimated by from 15 to 20, estimated by $20 billion invested every year in this field to offer solutions and competitive services and solutions. In Huawei, we declare our commitment with the digital transformation in Africa. The second point is our philosophy in Africa and for Africa. From more than 20 years in more than 50 African countries, Huawei stands beside the customers and shares its experience in the digital transformation in many fields with great openness. We actually in Egypt, for example, we deal with more than 20 partners and government sectors in the field of energy and transport and finance. And there is more than 200 partners in the field of digital transformation, in the field of digital transformation and digital industry. We continue to develop lots of programs with more than 2,400 partners in Africa to help them to move toward digital transformation. The third point is very important in the field of environmental environment, sustainability in the field of carbon. There are around a lot of countries in the world are committed to use the green energy, and we invest a lot of money in this field. In the year 2021, Huawei concluded an agreement on the Red Sea with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, estimated by 400 million kilowatt per hour. This is the biggest project ever in the field of green energy. And the last point I would like to tackle, which is training the parents. From a while, I spoke with His Excellency the Minister about our commitment, and we will continue to train the skills in the African continent to support the development. So it's very important to speak about the skills and the will and the capacity building, and the third, and also developing a green economy and preserving the environment. And the last point is investing to develop and to have capacity building for the young talents. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Philippe Wang. I go to Dr. Amr Talat. We were speaking about helping Africa in the infrastructure and digital transformation. And Egypt is part and parcel of the continent. So if you have any comment on the speakers, and we want to know from you a briefing about the Egyptian companies that fostering the integration of digital transformation. Thank you. A very, very rich session, a very rich forum with the opinions, the ideas, and all that was discussed. And if you are speaking about partnership, and at the same time, I would like to comment and say we can link both together, because one of the most important points, I'll start with the most needy, and maybe I will go if I start with the infrastructure, and a lot of those who spoke, Dr. Philip and you spoke about the maybe penetration, accessibility to the internet in Africa and in a lot of countries. This is a main thing. A person cannot get training, knowledge, job opportunity, and to have access to the world without having and to be able to access the internet. Countries' efforts should collaborate in this regard. Egypt proposed HARD project. Through HARD project, by 2023, there will be a cable owned by the Egyptian telecommunication company that actually runs around the African continent, and it could reach the coastal countries on the two eastern and western coast of Africa and the landlocked countries, to give a biggest accessibility to more countries with lesser prices, and thus more number to get their opportunity to have accessibility to the internet. I'll move to the other dimension from what was discussed, the morals of the internet, behavior on the internet, specifically with the increase of dependence on the AI and the algorithm of AI. Unless there is a balanced number from different ethnicities and peoples to be used to build the algorithm of AI, those algorithms will be biased to certain countries and nations more than the other, and this is forms great injustice to the people who are deprived from uploading their data on those algorithms. Egypt, within the umbrella of this partnership, is leading a group in the African Union and a group in the United Nations to represent Africa in the morals of AI, and so that the African peoples will have a just share in the data and data that feed the algorithm of AI. And then I move to protection over the internet. We all depend by a way or another on the social media in all walks of our life, be it following the news, communicating with friends, whether spreading news and discussing them. This is something that should be actually joined with an ethical system that prevents the users of the internet from bullying, from harassment, from attack, from stalkers. from bad thoughts, from trespassing personal limits and privacy, because if you are speaking about huge amount of data and using of such data, that should be accompanied with an ethical line, and using such data would not actually trespass the protection of the privacy of the individual who is using his data, who is using, either we use it in a collective manner, in a certain manner, so that we can maximize its benefit. And in the movie that you presented, it's a national resource like water and petrol, but it should be actually protected so that we will benefit from the data and at the same time protect the owner of this data. And this is vitally important. This is a human right, by the way. Yes, this is an authentic right, and the important grows, and the impact grows with the advancement in technology and with the increase of our dependence on the data in all parts of our life. Dr. Mu'taz mentioned like the personalized medicine. This is something very positive, but this is the other face of the coin. Inside such systems, there will be detailed data about the case of the patient that should be protected. And if we want to benefit from the personalized medicine, this should not actually trespass the right of the citizen to protect his data. We were also speaking about the metaverse, and Dr. Dina and Anita and John spoke about this. There should be to have a more effective learning, to attend meetings in a more effective manner. But we don't want to be isolated from our reality. And I'm not wearing to the controller or the glass, and I figure out that I'm not living in a palace. I'm just staying in a room, and maybe I would be psychologically affected. We want to make sure that we are training, especially the youth and the new generation, who will be more apt to this and have the ability to wear the glasses for long hours, and and when he actually takes it off, he's shocked with the reality. So we want to prepare him that this is complementary and not an alternative to the reality, but the reality will remain the reality. I want to improve and develop without escaping from it to a virtual imaginary reality, and to be I want to will be indulged in. I will stop with what I started, because I think it's the base, which is the human development, education and training. Maybe Dr. Mu'taz pointed to our efforts in the new industrial schools, who will give technician and will provide us with technician. And I want to say, we as African countries, we should share in human development. I want to close with an initiative that His Excellency the President presented in the third edition of the World Youth Forum, and training 10,000 African youth and establishing 100 Egyptian and African country in the field of digital games and AI. And in the last 3 years, we made a platform to train 10,000 Egyptian and African youth, and they were trained. We already established 100 Egyptian and African company, and this is a role model for a fruitful cooperation between the countries of the African continent. Thank you, Dr. Amr Talat, Minister of Communication. I would like also to extend my thanks to the speakers, whether inside or those who are joining us through Zoom or social media. At the end, I want to confirm that in all fields and with a speedy pace, digital technology goes with a fast pace. It is a train that you cannot catch unless you have a real will and effort from the nations, so that we wouldn't be outside the future. Thank you very much. Goodbye.